this section is really important because the source of information that you're going to use in your application project and when trying to understand a company comes back to two documents. The first one is the 10K. The second is the investor presentation. So what I did is I put in Steel Dynamics, and that's the company I'm working with. And this is their homepage. And as we go across, we can see about the history, the portfolio, careers, internships, operations, products, sustainability, investors. So we're going to want to go to the investor page. And when we go investor page, we get all sorts of information. But the first thing we have is here a profile, supplemental financial information, investor overview, presentations, conference calls, and generally when earnings come out, the company does a conference call to discuss it with analysts. These can be good to use. But let's just go on to SEC filings, because that's what the 10K is. And as you can see, I'll go here, I'll put in annual filings, 10K, search, and we can see the 10K is going back all the way to 2003. This is the most recent one, and what you can see is it's available in different formats for different purposes. So when we're extracting data, we're going to use the Excel, but for what I want you to read, you really want to start with the 10K. And this is the 10K. They're all a standard format. They all look basically the same, and it indicates the name of the company, their address, their TIN. We got to keep our social security numbers confidential, but theirs are out there. And this talks about what the filing is. The next page is always the table of contents, and this is where you start. I'd like to highlight a couple of pieces up front for you. What's the business? And management's discussion and analysis. Okay, so we're going to look at this, and let's just click on that. And what it does is it walks us through and tells us what the business is all about. How do they look at the business? What's the management team? So that is our first stop. And when you're starting in and you want to know about the business, this is a good place to start. The next thing, if we come down, is there's a piece called Selected Financial Data. And this is very high-level information, but it's a good place to start to look for some of your rate volume drivers. And here we can see it's a summary income statement, but it has shipments of products, okay, and key numbers. Now, these are not the financials, okay? Keep that in mind. So when you're building your models, you want to take it from the actual financials. But as we keep going down, item 7 is everything you're going to need to understand what's going on. And what it does is it goes through, tells you there's forward-looking statements, but it goes through how they classify things, okay, what goes into them. It talks about what happened, okay, and it will show you all this different detail about the different operating segments. Your companies will have this too. So you really need to spend some time reading this and understanding that. So you really are going to run through, and I'm just doing this quickly, what happened with the company. So this is probably the biggest source of information. You need to read it. What I would suggest you do as you get started here, let's go back up to the top, is you actually go through and read the 10K, okay, with especially with emphasis on, you want to take it through, you want to know what's there, but the most important thing for you, the business, management discussion and analysis. Now, what we're going to find is this consolidated financial statements and supplemental data. We're going to look at it in PDF format, and we see the different financial statements that are there. This is the opinion of management on do they have controls in place. Then there is a registered public accounting firm statement, their opinion, but then we get into the balance sheet, okay? And it will show us significant detail. So this is the source of information is from this. In a financial statement, you have the actual financials, but more importantly, excuse me, gives you a little more, but what it does is it talks about the accounting. It gives the notes to financial statements tell you how income is recognized. It gives you detail on inventory, what makes it up. It gives you detail on property, plant, and equipment. It gives you a lot of detail, so you can always dig down. When you've identified something, you can dig down. So you start with the business, you go on to management analysis, the financial statements, and the notes. And as you dig, you're going to find a lot of good things in here, but you have to start to think, what is it telling me? Okay? And at this point, we see there's an acquisition. Okay? So it tells us about the acquisition. The debt, it tells us about the debt. So I would say take an hour. This is not always easy to do, but breeze through it, then come back and look at those sections that I mentioned. So that gives us the 10K, most important document. The indexes there, they're laid out pretty much the same. Every company, when you look at it, has to, let's go back up here. There's a lot of information, okay? But take a look at this right now. All of these item numbers are the same for every company. Every company has item 7, item 1, okay? The labels are all the same. So that's the 10K. Now let's take a look at an investor presentation and what is similar and what is not. Now, we've looked at the 10K, and let's come back and we can see investor presentations. And what we can see is an investor presentation as of November 2019, a presentation on their sales or on their earnings call, which gives us information. But let's just take a look at the earnings call very briefly here to see what they say. Sometimes this is interpretation of what they're doing and what the future is going to look like. So they're going into the future. So, of course, here's the disclosure that says, okay, this you got to pay attention here. It's not all true. But they talk about different things. They consider injury-free important, diverse markets. So they're sharing us what the results are. Okay, doesn't always look good, but they talk about why and explain it in a digital format. And here it is. They're showing us what the free cash flow is. Again, they're trying to sell you on the company. So they talk about here's some of their strategies, okay? And this you'll use as you move forward here. And it's telling us that it is going to grow sales and by how much, okay? So it gets you a lot of detail about what the future is going to be like. So that is one. If we go back and we find the actual investor presentation, we're seeing some of the same things, but it tells us this is where I found they're going to premium value added. This is where I found some of these. These are some of the strengths. And notice it's visual, okay? And when they're showing they're delivering growth and shareholder value, they're taking us through this to see it so we can visually see it. We can read and interpret all of this, and we can see strong records of steel shipments going up. If we look at this steel, we can see they went from 5.8 million tons to 10, doubled. So they're giving you a picture of how it's working. And I think this is important to see the future. In each one of these sections, we'll talk about capital. This talks about capital. The strong balance sheet, when we take a look at liquidity, and this is where you're going to have to do some work, is look at liquidity here. It's telling us that they basically have total debt of $2.4 billion, cash and cash equivalents of $1.2 billion. So they have net debt, they're saying, of $1.2 billion. But they have money available on their line of credits, so they have pretty good liquidity. Okay, and now we can see when is the maturity of these dollars. So you can see in 20 they're pretty good. 21 we got a problem. A lot coming due. But what we can see here, here's our investment grade ratings. You can see they are investment grade. That means you probably want to take a look at credit ratings under interest rates, risk, and reward to understand what they are. But these are ones, again, take the time to read them. I will know if you've read them, okay? Because you'll be able to find out what is going on, okay? And you can find it, no pun intended, but a ton of information here. We then have adjusted earnings, where they give you some of the key pieces. For those of you that will be taking Finance 315, financial statement analysis, we will go into that. So these are the two things that you really want to spend some time. Before you move forward, spend an hour or two reading it. You'll be able to see what's there and be able to construct the story. If you got any questions, please let me know.